This is an NBC News special report. Here's Kate Snow.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're coming on the air with breaking news set to shake up the Republican primary and the race for the White House. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis just announcing that he will drop out of the race in a video posted on the platform X. It comes 2 days before the first in the nation primary in New Hampshire.
I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign.
Today's news makes the Republican primary effectively a two-person race now, with the frontrunner, former President Trump, facing off against his former UN ambassador, Nikki Haley. Polls show her trailing Trump by double digits in New Hampshire. DeSantis also endorsing former President Trump instead of Haley in today's announcement. Let's go straight out to NBC's Dasha Burns. She's at that DeSantis rally in New Hampshire where DeSantis was supposed to be today. Dasha, do we know if he'll be there? And what do we know about this announcement and whether it will help President Trump?
Well, look, Kate, there was some chaos leading up to this announcement. He had canceled his morning media appearances. He was supposed to appear on this network this morning on Meet the Press. They canceled that. They were supposed to be in South Carolina. Then they pivoted to an event tonight in New Hampshire. That event is now canceled, and I am told by sources close to the campaign that he is now in Florida. So any more that we're going to hear from the governor is going to come from Tallahassee. Now, this is especially striking to hear from the Florida governor that he is endorsing former President Trump, given that the thrust of this campaign was his battle with the former president. You'll remember at the outset of this, he was seen as the main potential alternative to take on the former president. This was the guy that at the beginning of this, Kate, was seen as the rising star in the Republican Party. But at the outset, from the beginning, this is a campaign that really struggled to get off the ground, from a launch on Twitter Spaces that was full of glitches to a campaign that ran out of money halfway through last year, to a really difficult time finding his message, finding a connection with the voters. And here we are today, dropping out and endorsing former President Trump, with whom he had a bitter battle throughout this campaign. The insults flew back and forth, but especially from former President Trump. But this is something that was starting to coalesce over the last several days as we started to get a sense from the campaign of a little bit of the air, the wind being taken out of the sails, Kate. I did interview the governor the day after he came in a distant second in the Iowa caucuses, and he told me an anecdote that a voter came up to him and said, "I'm going to vote for Trump this time, but I'll vote for you next time." And this might be the best chance that the governor has of preserving his political future, given the polling here in New Hampshire had him now coming in a distant third, and South Carolina wasn't looking much better. Not a clear path forward for him now on one-on-one with Nikki Haley. But what I'll tell you, Kate, is that what our numbers have shown over the course of this campaign, because Ron DeSantis campaigned to try to chip away at former President Trump's voters, is going to be potentially creating some obstacles for Nikki Haley now that DeSantis is out of the race and that he is endorsing former President Trump, because that vote share, that ballot share, is very likely to now mostly go to former President Trump, potentially creating even more of an uphill climb now that Nikki Haley does have that two-person race that she's been waiting for, Kate.
And Dasha, just a couple more questions about Ron DeSantis. He went through a lot of money, no? I think they spent a lot of money on campaign commercials. And does he return now? For how long how much longer in his term does he have for Florida governor?
Well, he's going to wait out. He's going to finish this term, but his political future is a huge question mark. You know, former President Trump leaves a lot of corpses in his wake. There are plenty of candidates who have gone up against former President Trump and have sort of squandered their futures once they have come up against that juggernaut. And that was a fear from the start for Florida Governor DeSantis. I remember donors and supporters at the beginning when he was starting to struggle to find a message and find this footing warning when it came to former President Trump, not quite attacking him, but not quite, praising him or supporting him either, like some candidates like Vivek Ramaswamy. Some supporters were worried about what this might mean for his future prospects. Now he hopes that he has finished potentially strong enough to have a future, given he has had a few good moments the last couple of debates, that he might be able to, have a better road ahead if he were to be able to try again in 2028, which he could do, given the term that he has as governor.
All right, Dasha Burns for us, who covered Ron DeSantis. Dasha, thank you. Let me bring in NBC's Ali Vitale. She's also in New Hampshire on the campaign trail on this Sunday. Ali, you cover Nikki Haley. DeSantis endorsed President Trump instead of Nikki Haley. We just heard Dasha talk about it. This has to be difficult for the Haley campaign, because if Donald Trump pulls those voters away on Tuesday in New Hampshire, that's not a great sign for Nikki Haley, is it?
It's not a great sign, Kate, and you're right to point that out. We're watching the rest of the Republican field really coalesce behind the former president, sort of coming home to the MAGA ideology that he has really recreated the Republican Party in the image of. Nevertheless, Haley here, where I'm standing just in the last few minutes, saying that this is now the race that she's been hoping for. She has been saying over the course of the last week that in her mind and her campaign's mind, Ron DeSantis fell short of the expectations he himself set in Iowa. Haley shot over those expectations, and now they're just hoping to do better in New Hampshire. Better, of course, is not them vowing that they will win here, but Haley in just the last few minutes saying that she's going to be fighting until the very last second, making note of the fact that, and a phrase that she often uses, there were a lot of fellas, in her words, who started in this race, and that now it's just left to one fella and one lady. She punctuated that remark by saying, "May the best woman win." All of that, of course, referencing the fact that Haley is the only woman who is in this race. And again, Kate, she has been saying for many days now that it's her versus Donald Trump. In the minds of voters, some of whom I've spoke to on the ground here in New Hampshire, they said that they were in some cases entertaining Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley. This, of course, makes that choice for them. But the fact that DeSantis is dropping out and endorsing Trump, I think, is less a question of where do the votes go, because in my conversations with the Haley camp, they reference the fact that DeSantis was polling in single digits here. In fact, they think that they probably are going to benefit more from the fact that the former New Jersey governor Chris Christie left the race a few weeks ago. More of his voters are likely to move to the Haley camp now. They're less concerned about Ron DeSantis leaving the race, but I can tell you, too, there is some snark attached to this from the Haley campaign, especially because for them, DeSantis and Haley were both sparring as people who, in her case, were governors. He is a governor. Now the Haley team feeling vindicated, at least against one of their rivals, Ron DeSantis.
All right, Ali Vitale for us there. Let me switch over to NBC's Vaughn Hilliard. He is covering former President Trump. I believe he's heading to a Trump event in the car right now in New Hampshire. This is a bit surprising to drop out, Ron DeSantis to drop out before Tuesday's vote. We've been talking about what it means for former President Trump. Have you heard anything from his campaign yet?
A campaign senior advisor tells NBC News that they are going to let Donald Trump do the first talking in responding to Ron DeSantis dropping out. I think we should be clear here. Donald Trump sent a message early on when he announced all the way back in November of 2022, early for a presidential candidate, almost 6 months before Ron DeSantis decided to formally hop into the race. And that was that the rest of the Republican Party should be careful about taking him on. Donald Trump has been clear about his revenge tour, in which back in 2022, he went and effectively was able to oust Republican members of the House of Representatives in Republican primaries, those members who had voted to impeach him after the January 6th attack. And now the question is, for Ron DeSantis, did he go too far in this, or will Donald Trump welcome him back into the fold? Because this go-around, there are other notable figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, folks who have been by Donald Trump's side through this entire process, who he has elevated to more prominent roles in what you could call the MAGA movement today. And for Ron DeSantis, he is the latest to drop. And for Donald Trump here, we aren't even to the New Hampshire primary yet, and yet his campaign, I was asking a senior advisor just 48 hours ago, Would they provide a gentle off-ramp for Nikki Haley or for Ron DeSantis to get out of this race and welcome them back into the fold in order to unite the Republican Party? And that senior advisor responded to me, we'll let the chips fall where they may. There was great frustration with Ron DeSantis specifically, and one of the campaign managers for Donald Trump this go-around actually ran Ron DeSantis' first gubernatorial campaign back in 2018. And a Trump campaign staffer told me when Ron DeSantis was considering jumping into this presidential race that for anybody that took a job with Ron DeSantis, they would never be welcomed into a Trump campaign or a future Trump White House. Those were the stakes. Now, the question is does Donald Trump get over this bitter divide and try to unite the Republican Party, or did Ron DeSantis go too far, even if he's dropping out now before the New Hampshire primary?
Vaughn Hilliard with us from a car on his way to the next Donald Trump event. Vaughn, thanks so much. I want to turn to our senior Washington correspondent, Hallie Jackson. She joins me on the phone. Hallie, I guess I want to ask just a blunt question. Is this it?
Sure.
Is this Donald Trump, the former president, securing this Republican nomination?
So, okay, it's such a good question. It is the question to be asking at this point. It's obviously the voters who are going to determine that in New Hampshire and New South Carolina on Super Tuesday. But at this point, you have to look at the numbers, right? And this is something that I've been thinking about ever since we found out today that Ron DeSantis would be dropping out of the race. It is obviously significant. It is obviously interesting. It obviously adds to the dynamic that Nikki Haley wants to see, which is this two-person race, as she's been saying since Iowa, when obviously three candidates were in the race. But ultimately, Kate, remember where the numbers are and where the numbers consistently have been. Donald Trump has been stomping in this Republican primary process. That is what we have seen so far, not just in polling, but we've seen it in Iowa. We're looking ahead to what will happen in New Hampshire, where recent polls show that he does have, on average, a double-digit lead over Nikki Haley. It is his party, clearly based on what we see from Republican voters. There is a subset of people who identify as Republican or conservative who do not like him, a small subset. The question had always been, would anybody emerge as the sort of anti-Trump person in that anti-Trump lane to be able to take him down, essentially? And what we have seen consistently is that there hasn't been that kind of coalescing that somebody like Nikki Haley would want to see, at least not at this point. Obviously, you know, we live in a world of endless possibilities. Anything could happen, but it has just been, if past is precedent, what we have seen is so consistent. And so I just think we've got to be looking at it with that kind of lens, right? That Donald Trump has been dominant in this Republican primary process so far. We've seen it, and that is sort of the key thing to watch here when we talk about where is the suspense, if any. I will say a couple of things. Beyond Nikki Haley getting what she wants, which is a two-person race, there's a real question of whether she's going to be able to overcome what is, at least in polling, falling behind former President Trump. Second piece of this, of course, is what this looks like for Donald Trump moving forward. Listening to your conversation with Vaughn about whether or not Mr. Trump would bring Ron DeSantis into the fold. Keep in mind what an important state Florida is to Republicans in the electoral map. Keep in mind that Ron DeSantis handily won his reelection there, to the point that it caused some consternation in the political class when he waited so long to declare his run for the presidency, rather than trying to capitalize on some of that momentum after he defeated his opponent in the state of Florida, right? So what we have seen from Donald Trump in the past, and having covered him since his first presidential run, he is somebody who likes loyalty. It is not always a loyalty that is reciprocated, but he likes when people sort of are deferential to him as the leader of the Republican Party here. And what is clear is that at this moment he is. You look at the endorsements he's racked up, you look at where members of Congress are, particularly in the House of Representatives, and while there is this vocal anti-Trump faction, the more vocal pro-Trump faction seems to be the loudest here today, Kate.
Hallie Jackson with us on the phone. Hallie, thank you so much. For more, I want to bring in Meet the Press moderator, Kristen Welker. She also joins us by phone. Kristen, this was sort of unexpected, the timing here, but I wonder, you were supposed to speak with Governor DeSantis this morning on Meet the Press, and he canceled. I wonder if you had an inkling then that this might be coming.
Kate, that was our first tea leaf, that there was potentially the possibility that this could happen. Now, I spoke with his campaign overnight when they canceled. I said, is he planning to suspend his campaign? And at that point in time, that wasn't the firm plan. I was told that they huddled in Tallahassee and came to this decision ultimately that this was the right next step, and that frankly there was no path forward for Governor DeSantis. And so I do think the question becomes, what happens next? Now that he has dropped out of the campaign, You're absolutely right. I think folks expected him to be in this race through New Hampshire. We know that he had diverted resources to South Carolina. I'm told that he'd gotten some tough poll numbers out of South Carolina. That was yet another data point that led to this ultimate decision. In terms of this two-person race, look, as you've been talking about with Hallie and Vaughn and others, former President Trump is coming out of Iowa with an enormous amount of momentum, not just in terms of that massive win in Iowa, but also in terms of the endorsements that he has locked up. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, of course, someone who Nikki Haley appointed. So here's what I'm watching for heading into Tuesday. What happens with independents? Because Nikki Haley had a lead with independents. Now she's running neck and neck with independents and Donald Trump. And in order to win New Hampshire, in order to make the case that she has a path forward, she is going to have to secure a robust turnout among independents. It's not clear she's going to be able to do it, that there's enough time. I've been on the ground in New Hampshire. Kate, as you said, we were broadcasting from there earlier today, talking to voters, talking to independent voters, talking to Nikki Haley supporters who say they have wanted to see more fire from Nikki Haley. They've wanted to see her really blanket the state in these closing days of the race. Now, she has stepped up her campaigning. By the way, she stepped up her rhetoric, too, against Trump, bashing him for recent comments that he made, confusing her with former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. But the question that looms over all of this, Kate, is this too little, too late? And that is the question that remains to be seen. I did interview the governor of New Hampshire, Governor Sununu, today on the program. And I asked him if New Hampshire's make or break. He said, look, it's not make or break, but she's got to have a strong showing here. She's got to have a strong second place finish. And even that is a big, big question mark. If Donald Trump emerges from New Hampshire with a significant win, a significant lead, it's going to make it incredibly difficult for her to catch up to him, Kate.
Yeah, and that said, it's always up to the voters, right? The voters are the ones that decide what happens. But I do wonder, Kristen, if you've had any chance to talk with the Haley campaign, what do they see as their path right now? How, what would they like to happen on Tuesday?
It's a great question, Kate. Look, I think they are fighting for a strong second place finish. Obviously, she would like to win, but you've heard Governor Sununu really temper expectations. He initially was saying this is going to be a landslide. He has pulled that type of rhetoric back and said, look, we need to have a strong finish here on Tuesday. And then it's on to South Carolina. And that's part of the reason why the endorsement by Tim Scott is such a blow. As one source familiar with Tim Scott's decision said to me, the timing of this is significant because the goal of Trump world was really to try to use that endorsement, I was told, to put the final nail in the coffin of the Haley campaign. That's how they are viewing it. So her path goes through South Carolina, Kate. I asked Governor Sununu, if she can't win South Carolina, if she can't win her home state, what state can she win? Is that game over for Nikki Haley if she comes to the conclusion that she cannot win South Carolina? He didn't want to entertain that possibility. He said, I'm totally focused on New Hampshire. We've got to get through the primary on Tuesday first before we even begin to talk about South Carolina. But Kate, if she can't win her home state, you have to wonder what state can she win. And by the way, it's not just Tim Scott. The governor of South Carolina was stumping with Trump in New Hampshire. Senator Lindsey Graham, you have more than half of the GOP members of Congress who've endorsed former President Trump. So we are seeing Republicans just increasingly close ranks around Trump, making it increasingly more difficult for Nikki Haley. But Kate, let's go back to your point, which is the most important point, which is that ultimately this is up to the voters, and we've got to leave it to them. We're going to know a lot more on Tuesday night. But if you are the Haley campaign, you have got to, if not win, come in a very strong second place, I think, in order to see a path forward through South Carolina.
And if you're the Biden campaign, you're watching all of this very closely. We have just 30 seconds. What would you say they're looking at?
They are watching this very closely, and I can say inside Biden world, they have all but determined that the nominee, if you talk to them, looks like it will be Donald Trump. So they're operating from that perspective. That's why you see this messaging from President Biden focused on issues like democracy, and I think you're going to see them start to focus a lot more on abortion rights. The vice president poised to do that, and I think we're going to see a lot more from President Biden himself. They think that's a winning issue for them. Kate.
Kristen Welker with us on the phone, the moderator of Meet the Press. Kristen, always great to have you. Thank you so much. And thank you to Hallie Jackson and to our correspondents who remain in the field in New Hampshire. We're going to be watching everything as we lead into Tuesday night.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.